Radagast the Brown, one of the members of the Istari, but is he underrated? Hello and welcome to The Broken Sword, your YouTube home for The Lord of the Rings and all things J.R.R. Tolkien. In today's video, we look at the sometimes forgotten wizard, Radagast the Brown.
Build me a army worthy of Mordor.
From the start of today's video, let us make a note on the portrayal of Radagast in Peter Jackson's The Hobbit trilogy. Though Sylvester McCoy is no doubt a great actor, and some may call him a highlight of those films, the character we see in those movies bears little resemblance to the character that we see get mentioned in The Lord of the Rings, as a being supposedly on the level of Gandalf and Saruman. Or is he though? He may be of the same order, but is he in fact a weaker being than the other two? Or has he just become a bit misunderstood due to his depiction in the movies? Well, let's look a bit more into this. First of all, what we know about Radagast is that he is a friend to birds and beasts, master of hues and shapes, and that he remains a friend to Gandalf and our heroes throughout The Lord of the Rings despite the treason of Isengard. So what we're going to look at is of course whether or not Radagast is underrated in his duties as a wizard, as a member of the Istari. Radagast is introduced by Gandalf to us at the Council of Elrond, but we do not find out the meaning of his name until we look at the Unfinished Tales of Numenor and Middle-earth, where it says, "For Radagast the Fourth became enamoured of the many beasts and birds that dwelt in Middle-earth, and forsook elves and men, and spent his days among the wild creatures. Thus he got his name, which is in the tongue of Numenor of old, and signifies, it is said, tender of beasts." But if we go back to The Lord of the Rings and what Gandalf says during that time at the Council of Elrond when discussing Saruman and Radagast. "For Saruman the White is the greatest of my order. Radagast is, of course, a worthy wizard, a master of shapes and changes of hue, and he has much lore of herbs and beasts, and birds are especially his friends." This is when discussing how Radagast had brought a message from Saruman to Gandalf, and straight away, Radagast being used as a messenger for Saruman may signal a lower standing, but that is not an outright certainty at this point. Also, the only times we get to see Radagast throughout The Lord of the Rings appears in flashbacks when Gandalf describes the betrayal of Saruman and his imprisonment at Orthanc. Additionally, it is Radagast who informs Gandalf of the reappearance of the Nine Riders in Black and their search for the Shire. He delivers a message on behalf of Saruman asking for his assistance, appearing innocent at this time. In that moment, just as Radagast though makes to ride off after this is done, Gandalf asks him to. "Stay a moment," I said. "We shall need your help, and the help of all things that will give it. Send out messages to all the beasts and birds that are your friends. Tell them to bring news of anything that bears on this matter to Saruman and Gandalf. Let messages be sent to Orthanc." Gandalf then goes on and further states that that was the undoing of Saruman's plot, for Radagast knew no reason why he should not do as I asked, and he rode away towards Mirkwood where he had many friends of old. And the eagles of the mountains went far and wide, and they saw many things, the gathering of wolves and the mustering of orcs, and the Nine Riders going hither and thither in the lands, and they heard news of the escape of Gollum, and they sent a messenger to bring these tidings to me. Because of this, it is the strongest possibility that when the eagle, Gwaihir, comes to rescue Gandalf at Orthanc, it was all because of Radagast's actions that summoned him to them, which is obviously slightly different to those of you who only know the movies, where it appears Gandalf summons the eagle himself using a moth. This, of course, is not the case, and really should be thanked to Radagast. There are suggestions that though he lost sight of his original purpose, that of opposing Sauron when the Istari were sent to Middle-earth at around the year 1000 of the Third Age, it seems that his lack of due diligence in his efforts was not as bad a betrayal of his purpose as it was intended as was Saruman's treason and self-seeking as Saruman of many colours. Radagast was not evil. He had no twisted intentions. He, for want of a better word, got distracted. It is also possible that he communicated with the Eagles that brought aid to the Free Peoples during the Battle of the Morannon II, when, again, the Eagles showed up during the battle at the very gates of Mordor. Though his betrayal wasn't on the same level of Saruman's, like I said, he was not evil or corrupted in his thinking. It does, however, seem that it was serious in itself, as much as Tolkien suggested that he might not have been able to take the boats west at the end of the Third Age with Gandalf and the rest of those leaving Middle-earth for good and travelling to the west. His name gets no mention here, so it is believed he was left behind. The picture that emerges of Radagast is of a wizard whose original purpose was forgotten, though he never turned against the forces of good and acted in his own interest to the same degree that Saruman did. And with that kind of power being in play, the resistance of such temptation is a constant theme throughout the novel, and one of the greater achievements a character can obtain is resisting unnatural power that would temporarily empower them beyond their original purpose. This was not Radagast's wish. He did not want power, he just wanted to understand nature and birds and beasts. That is what he was interested in. What we do know about Radagast comes mostly from speculation, as in the end, he is only mentioned once in all of The Hobbit as the good cousin of Gandalf who lives near the southern borders of Mirkwood, and is only seen in those flashbacks throughout The Lord of the Rings. In The Hobbit, Gandalf mentions Radagast in passing as, like I said, a potential cousin when he is talking to the skin changer Bjorn. This is an interesting look at how the wizards feel about each other, as he does not use words such as companion, comrade, or what have you, but rather a cousin, like family, which seems to indicate something of a purpose that we would only learn more about much later in the published The Silmarillion or the Unfinished Tales on the Istari. The character, as most of you will know and mentioned earlier, was played by Sylvester McCoy in the Peter Jackson movies, which I feel it is fair to say is a version that bears little resemblance to the character as we ever see him in the books, of course the little that we do see. But from all indications, Radagast seems a powerful and cunning wizard who uses his perceived foolishness to be a bit like a good detective. This could be his way of getting others to let down their guards and maybe just underestimate him, to be that unassuming character perhaps. While in the movies we see him not doing battle against the Nazgul at Dol Guldur, but instead being the escape driver for Gandalf, there's no reason to suspect that he would be unable to do so if he put his mind to it, even if this is something he never wished to do. After all, he is of the same order as Saruman and Gandalf, and even Sauron. Though we didn't get this in the Hobbit book, as was earlier said, there is every reason to think that he would fight, or could fight, if he was called upon to do so. Realistically, this would only happen if his birds and beasts were threatened, rather than just the peoples of Middle-earth, but it's not for us to say it was impossible for him to do so. There is just very little to find on Radagast, and his role in the Hobbit films was, like many things, greatly expanded for better or worse. With little known of Radagast and still less known of, say, the Blue Wizards as well, Alatar and Palando, who again, their fate is unknown, though we do have a video covering them, it is fair to say that most things about Radagast are also still far more up for debate than either Gandalf or Saruman. He is very much one of the Istari of mystery. And so there we have it, a look at the little we know about Radagast the Brown, and from that, what can we decide about if he was an underrated member of the Istari? Radagast has been a fascinating and mysterious character since his earliest appearance. There are potentially more sightings of him throughout The Lord of the Rings, where some believe that when the three hunters see that mysterious figure in the forest and they mistake him for Gandalf, though Gandalf thinks it could be Saruman, it could in fact instead be Radagast. Their animals fled, so perhaps they fled to the source and not away from it. We never get a proper answer for this, so there is obviously much debate, especially when it comes to the type of hat he was wearing, but it is possible it was Radagast, as he is a master of shapes and hues. Although, his reasoning for being there at that time would also be completely unknown. He was never a traitor to the side of goodness, and his aid to Gandalf shows that his heart was still in the fight, if not his person, like he demonstrates when passing the messages between Gandalf and Gwaihir, potentially sending the Eagles to the Black Gate and remaining an ever-helpful assistant. But at the end of the day, that seems to be all he can be, an assistant, not the main guy. Yavanna had to beg Saruman, or Karumo at the time, to take Radagast to Middle-earth in the first place, and Saruman always thought of him as simple and foolish, but Gandalf knew there was no evil in his heart. So, is he underrated? Maybe not. He was just more interested in natural things than his true mission, and as that was the whole reason that he was even there, I think it is fair to say he did, in fact, fail. So perhaps, at the end of it all, Saruman had a point. With that now though, it is time for my question of the day, which is, what do you think of Radagast's portrayal in The Hobbit? Did you like it, or do you think it let the character down? Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this in the comment section below. And now to shout out our patrons. You guys have been amazing in supporting our short film. We are making great progress, and I cannot thank you all enough. We have the Divine Power tier members of Kevin and Abram, the Fire Demon tier members of Nashith and Gregory, and the Wizard Staff tier members of John, Andrew, Jennifer, Hunter, and David too. You are all true legends of the Bro Harem. Finally, if you have managed to reach the very end of this video with me today and you enjoy what you see on the channel, then please consider hitting that subscribe button with the bell icon too so that you could be notified of all future uploads. And with that, all I've got left to say is thank you for spending just some of your time with me today, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.